Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Here is an example of your quiz number 2. It'll be showing up on Monday morning, and you will have until Tuesday at midnight to finish it. And I'm going to give you examples of the types of problems you will find there, and the problems you will see will look just a whole lot like these. So if I were you, once I get this sent to you, I would run it off, have the hard copy handy so that you can look at the problems and successfully navigate through the quiz number 2. All right, these come from 2.2 and 3.1, those two sections. So let's take a look at these. Here we go. Number 1. In a class in which the final course grade depends entirely on the average of 4 equally weighted 100-point tests, Charles has scores of 80, 81, 88 on the first 3. What range of scores on the 4th test will give Charles a B for the semester? And then here's some explanation. A B means an average between 80 and 89 inclusive. And for the record, this word inclusive is very important. It's going to tell you what inequality symbol to use. So I want my average to be in between 80 and 89. And the larger number goes on the right. The lower number goes on the left. And my inequality symbols always point toward the smaller of the two numbers. What inequality symbol am I going to use? Less thans or less than or equal to? Well, because of this inclusive, that means including 80 and 89, I'm going to use less than or equal to. So there's a couple of ways you can read this. 80 is less than or equal to the average, is less than or equal to 89, which is kind of vague. Or you can simply say it like this. The average is in between 80 and 89, including 80 and 89. So that's the general expression. So let's fill in the details. How do you do an average? Well, you add this stuff up and divide by however many things you have. I'm going to have four equally weighted grades. And so here we go. Let's do the 4. An average is adding 4 things up. What's my last grade? I don't know. Since I don't know, I'm going to indicate it's an X. How do you average 4 things? You add them up and divide by 4. So that's what an average is going to look like. Now keep in mind, your problem may have 5 equally weighted grades or 3 equally weighted grades. Let that determine what you're dividing by. So this is still in between and including 89 and 80. All right, I have a compound inequality, a 2-part inequality, and it's got a fraction in it. The strategy I gave for you in your notes was multiply every part by the denominator. That's going to get rid of my denominator. So I'm going to multiply every part by 4. I'm going to multiply this by 4 over 1 because it's a fraction. Why am I doing that? For obvious reasons, to cancel my denominator. I don't want a fraction, and I don't get one. So what I have is 80 plus 81 plus 88 plus x. No more fraction. Is in between, and ladies and gentlemen, use your calculators. 4 times 8 is 320. Don't do it in your head if you don't have to. And this is 356. All right, what you're going to do next? Most of you guys will add this up. And you're going to get 249. Don't forget it's plus x. I cannot tell you how many people I've seen writes 249x, which means multiplication. No, this is 249 plus x, which means I'm not going to be dividing in a minute. I'm going to be subtracting. Hey, I'm trying to get the x by itself. Right now it's hanging out with a 249, a positive 249. How do you undo a positive 249? You subtract a 249. And you get 71. And you get 107. So his grade, in order to get a B, has to be somewhere between 71 and 107. But wait a minute, you say. These are 100-point tests, so he's not going to get a 107. So what does he have to get? He's got to get between a 71 and a 100. Doesn't make any sense to say 107 because there is no possible grade of 107. So assuming all the tests are non-negative, express your answer in interval notation. Here's the interval notation. Whoops, that's not interval notation, is it? That's the inequality notation. So the interval notation means I use parentheses or brackets, depending on what these symbols are. These both have equal signs, so I'm going to use brackets. So that means it is in between 71 and 100. Now the brackets mean these points are included, and the equal signs mean are included, so this is consistent. If there were no equal signs here, I would use parentheses instead of brackets. So this is the answer I'm going to put for interval notation. This is inequality notation. This is interval notation. All right. Hey, we've got another compound inequality. Consider the following compound inequality. First, I want to solve the inequality and express again in interval notation. So here we go. When you have, notice I got equal signs here, but no equal sign here, so I'm going to get a bracket over here and a parentheses over here when I do my interval notation. Keep that in mind. Watch for the details. When you have a compound inequality, your variable will always be in the middle. So this is what I need to focus on. I need to focus on getting this part of the double inequality just plain old z, just z by itself. Right now I got 5z and I got a minus 7. So first thing I'm going to do is eliminate that minus 7 by adding 7 to all parts. Some of you guys find it difficult, and some people find this for the rest of your lives, difficult to conceive of adding a positive and a negative number. Hey, let your calculator do it. Negative 37 plus 7, my calculator tells me is negative 30. Hey, I got 5z. I don't want 5z, I want z. So I'm going to divide both sides. I shouldn't say both sides, all parts by 5. That means z is somewhere in between and including, that's positive 6, that's negative 6. Now, whoop, look what I did. No equal sign there. So, watch those details. So z is somewhere in between negative 6 and positive 6, including positive 6. Now I want to write this in interval notation. So since there's no equal sign here, parentheses. Negative 6 all the way to 6. Since there is an equal sign here, brackets. So just plain old less than, parentheses, less than or equal to, brackets. So there's my first answer in interval notation. Secondly, I want to graph the solution set. Now you're going to have Hawks will give you a number line, and you can spread out your solution set by choosing endpoints. And you're going to choose an endpoint at negative 6, and you're going to choose for that endpoint a parentheses. Then you're going to choose another endpoint, positive 6. And for that endpoint, you're going to choose a bracket. Whatever is corresponding to your interval notation. And you're going to indicate everything in between those two. So as I, the uninitiated observer, look at your solution set, I go, hey, this is a bracket, that means 6 is included. This is a parentheses, that means -6 is not. All right, there's my second problem. Thirdly, this is taking us to 3.1, the rectangular coordinate system, all those x's and y's. It says for the following equation, and there it is, determine the values of the missing entries. Reduce all fractions to lowest terms. Okay, here's what they're going to give you. They're going to give you an equation, and then they're going to give you some x's and y's. But notice, at least one of them is going to be missing. They will give you an x and ask you to find the y, or they will give you a y and ask you to find the x. And you're going to do this in a very simple, straightforward way. You're going to consider each of these by itself, one at a time. And if they give you an x, you are going to substitute that value for x and solve for y. So instead of 12x minus 10y equal 12, 12x, no, x is 0. So in the place of x, I'm putting a 0. Everything else stays the same. Now you know that 12 times 0 is 0, so it just disappears. So I get -10y equal 12. I don't want -10y, I want y. Divide both sides by -10. And here's where you need to remember that a positive divided by a negative is going to be a negative. Another way to think of it is, if you have an odd number of negatives, like 1, 3, 5, 7 negatives, your answer is going to be negative. I got one negative here. So y is negative 12 over 10, but notice, reduce all fractions to lowest terms, -6 over 5. Is that okay? All right, the next one. Notice in the next one, they tell me what y is. Y is 1. So in the place of y, instead of -10y, I'm going to put a 1. And solve this guy. Now once I take this first step, I should just have one variable after that. So it shouldn't be too difficult to solve. Add 10 to both sides. Oop, I put 22 there. Should have put 12. Sorry. Add 10 to both sides. 12x equals 22. Divide by 12. Now x is 22 over 12. But what that's going to mean is lowest terms. Each of these is divisible by 2. So I'm going to divide them both by 2. 11/6. All right, this next one, x is -4. So 12 times -4 minus 10y is 12. Again, use your calculators. -48. I want to get the y's by themselves. That means I have to get rid of a -48 by doing the opposite. -10y is 60. Divide both sides by -10. Once again, I'm dividing a positive by a negative, or you could think of it as I have one negative, an odd number of negatives, so this is going to be negative. Y is -6. All right, the next one, x is 1.5. Most of you don't know what 12 times 1.5 is, just in your head. That's why we have our scientific calculators beside us. When you take your quiz, have this sheet run off beside you and your scientific calculator with you. 1.5 of 12s is 18. Again, you get the y by itself, minus 18. Negative 10y is negative 6. We're going to divide both sides by negative 10. A negative divided by a negative, even number of negatives, it's going to be positive. They're both divisible by 2, 3/5. And finally, y is 0. We got 12x minus 10 times 0 is 12. 10 times 0 is just 0, so that's gone. 12x is 12. Hey, this is easy. Divide both sides by 12. X is 1. So you're going to have one problem like this. You're given an equation. You're given either the x or the y, and you find the one that is missing. Our last type of problem comes from 3.1 also, and it asks for the distance. That means I better know the distance formula and the midpoint. I better know the midpoint formula. You have one of each. So determine the distance between these 2 points. I have a distance formula, and it looks like this. It's x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. Now, make sure when you have your distance formula and you're looking to use it to solve this guy that it looks just like this. If you leave out a plus, if you change these to plus or something, if you forget to square them, all this stuff is essential in the distance formula. Now, what's all this x2, y1 stuff? Well, you recall, I'm going to label my 2 points. I have 2 different points. I'm going to call one of them x1, y1. Every point has an x and a y. And I'm going to call the other guy x2, y2. And again, it does not matter which one you call which. If you reverse this, you'd still get the same answer. So what this means is I'm going to start filling all of these convoluted notations into this rather convoluted formula. So I have, don't forget it's a square root, x2, let's see, x2, that's negative 7, minus, don't forget to subtract whatever comes next, subtract x1, which is negative 6. Notice minus a negative 6 squared. And my formula tells me to add y2, let's see, that's negative 1, minus whatever y1 is, which is negative 6 also, squared. Look at all those negatives. That's possibly confusing to some of you guys. Well, let's get rid of some of them. Let's remind ourselves that minus a negative, or 2 negatives together, makes a positive. So I get negative 7 minus a negative 6 is plus 6 squared plus negative 1 minus a negative 6 is plus 6 squared. Again, use your calculators if you have difficulty combining positive and negative numbers. Negative 7 plus 6 is negative 1 squared. Negative 1 plus 6 is 5 squared. Now keep this in mind. Your next to last step is always going to be the sum of 2 positive numbers. You're never going to get a negative plus a positive. Why? Because you're squaring stuff. Square a negative, you get a positive. Square a positive, you get a positive. Square anything, positive. So here we go. Negative 1 squared is 1. Always get a positive. 5 squared, 25. What do I get? Square root of 26. That's it. There is my distance. And you will indicate the distance as square root of 26. Don't take the square root of 26 on your calculator and put 5 point something, because that is inexact and you'll get a wrong answer. Leave it exact, square root of 26. All right, finally, determine the midpoint of the segment that joins these same 2 points, just same 2 points. These are 2 points on the graph. If I draw a line between them, what is the middle, the midpoint of that line segment? And I have a midpoint formula. And it looks like this. It's just the average of the x's. How do you average two things? Why, you add them together and divide by 2. And the average of the two y's. And make sure they're in the right order. X's, then y's, right? All right, so I'm going to add my two x's, x1 and x2, and divide by 2. x1 is negative 6. x2 is negative 7 over 2. Now I'm going to add my two y's. y1 is negative 6 plus y2 is negative 1 over 2. So that's negative 13 over 2, and that's negative 7 over 2. And that's it. There's my midpoint. Those are simplified fractions. Nothing will go into 13 and 2 or 7 and 2. So that's it. All right, let me encourage you once more. Run this off. Have this handy so that you can have these 2 pages and the worked out problems, so that when you work your quiz number 2, you will have these types of problems handy to take advantage of. All right, this will be posted again. The quiz will be posted on Monday morning, and you will have all day Monday and all day Tuesday in which to do it. All right, good luck.